Welcome to the Wandering Tangent podcast. I'm BJ. With me is Jeff, and also Gary. I guess I'm not going to give him the title of special guest star anymore because he's been here often enough. And today we're talking about the 1964 comedy, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Very nice. All right, BJ, what is your first impression of this movie?
So I know Gary has read the book World War Z. Jeff, have you ever read this particular book?
No.
No. Okay. So in the book World War Z, during a certain part, they bring up what is called the 10-man rule. Do you know what the 10-man rule is?
No.
Okay. So the 10-man rule is that, or I guess it's more of a operational standard or maybe a philosophy. But the 10-man rule states that if there's a group of 10 experts or people, and they are asked a question or asked to solve a problem, if the first 9 people agree on how to solve the problem or answer the question, it is up to the 10th man to provide a opposing viewpoint.
Okay, this reminds me of 10 Angry Men almost.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Way kind of, but kind of.
Kind of, yeah. So, considering how popular Dr. Strangelove is, it has rave reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, for example. I'm gonna take the position of the 10th man and say it's not really funny. In my opinion.
Oh, BJ,
how did I find that funny?
How come you don't find the very existential threat of nuclear warfare to be completely unfunny? How dare you? This is comedy gold right here.
I mean, it wasn't the existential part. I actually thought that the plot itself was kind of interesting. I know it's based on a book, which title, I know the book's called Red Alert, but I don't know who wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
But, so, actually in my notes, I wrote down that I thought the first 45 minutes of the movie were okay-ish to pretty good. But, about the time that, precious bodily fluids became a prevalent subject and the humor, I'm doing air quotes, kind of kicked in, that's where the movie lost me. So
okay. So I was not expecting that kind of review from you, BJ, but
well, I kind of was too. I actually kind of was expecting that kind of review. This isn't for everybody. Jeff?
To a certain extent, you probably should have seen it coming because much like The Burbs, a lot of the comedy in this movie is based on the awkward, and from The Burbs, you know how I feel about awkward comedy.
Right.
Jeff, what are your impressions? This movie was my choice, so I inflicted this on you, so I think it's appropriate that I get to ask you this question now. What is your impression of this movie?
This is a satirical movie, and I think that in many different levels, it's funny, interesting, insightful about human nature, but it's also a caricature in a way, where like the human failings normally wouldn't be so dramatic, but you put them in a movie like this and exaggerate them a little bit, and you're able to see how people are quirky and struggle with basic problem solving. And it's a movie about the confusion and madness of everything around people and their paranoia and their perspectives and their own personal viewpoints that come in conflict with each other. So I thought it was funny. It's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and
good.
The lead actor and all that, you're like, is he going to say it's good or bad after all that? Yeah, it's a lot of words.
I was going to bring it up that if you managed to finish that thought without saying if you liked it or not, I was going to say that you dodged the question with great skill, but then you answered the question, so I don't get to say that.
Yes,
Okay.
that would be completely valid. Yeah, so it's great. I recommend it. It's a good Cold War film. I don't think it necessarily doesn't mock one side only. It kind of mocks everybody a little bit, and it shows the absurdity and craziness of many of the aspects of the Cold War.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's a good movie, and the lead actor in it, who plays several parts, I
Yes.
thought he was great. I've always liked all this stuff. I don't know his name.
We're
I
not
should have done
allowed to
research.
say, because his name is Peter Sellers, and we're not
Yeah,
allowed
that's
to
right.
say
Sorry.
Peter Sellers' character. We probably have, he's like 3 characters at least in this movie.
Yeah. We can talk about that, but yeah, Peter Sellers is great in it.
Oh yeah, he's definitely good. BJ, I think you might really like the book about this then. From what I understand, the book is not satirical at all. It just takes the
Yeah,
basic storyline, because the basic storyline is translated from the book to the movie. They just added satire to
that was
Do we know what the name of the book is?
Red
the
Alert.
book is Red Alert.
It is Red
written-
Alert, right? Okay.
Yeah, written in 1958 by Peter George. I brought up the Wikipedia page for the movie and in like the first paragraph. So now I know the answer to that.
And it's a really good kind of look into the what goes on, like what the basic storyline of the movie is translated directly from that book. So
So Gary, you asked us, but you also say that you inflicted this movie on us. So I'm not really
so
catching what your feelings about the movie is.
I laughed at a lot of this movie. I appreciate the story and I appreciate the movie, but I fully understand that sometimes, and especially some of the things that happen in this movie and some of the jokes are not going to be appreciated by everybody. Most especially when, like you said, when the General Jack Ripper starts going off on precious bodily fluids and uh, fluoride contamination and them putting stuff in
Well,
the
we
water
don't want to
to
get
turn
too
the
much into
frogs
spoilers, though.
communist people, communists, not other
Too
stuff.
late, Jeff.
Yeah, too late.
By the way, spoilers.
I tried.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
no,
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Too late now.
It's all right. It's an old movie.
We're going to spoil this 60-year-old movie, so spoiler alerts, everybody.
Oh yeah. Oh no, this is a very old movie. You're gonna see some actors in this movie if you haven't seen it before. You're gonna see some actors. They're gonna be like, "Wait a minute, is that?" And then you realize, no, wait, that is. For instance, I don't know if you guys caught one of the crew of the bomber. Did you see
James Earl Jones?
Yes,
Yes.
a very young.
Very young. Yep.
This proves that not all actors are born old looking. He was
Not all
he was
actors.
once
There's
a
some
young-
actors, they're just like,
Only Patrick
they start out at that older age. Yeah, only Patrick Stewart.
Only Patrick Stewart,
Yes.
not all of them. James Earl Jones
No.
was once a young and much more handsome man. I will say he aged gracefully, but he was much younger and more handsome, and this movie proves it.
But no, the kind of circle around what Gary was saying earlier. I did find the General Ripper scenes after he became comedic, air quotes, comedic, to be decidedly unamusing.
Okay, I'm going to...
I get what they were going for, but me personally, and I've said this before, I tried saying this in our last podcast, a review one, that comedy is very subjective to the person, to the individual, we'll say. But you guys were too busy mocking me for not liking The Burbs for me to say that.
Oh, did
I
we scar you
understand.
too much? Now,
No.
now you have to tread on eggshells.
No. Well, if I was treading on eggshells, I would not come here and say, yeah, the star comedy everyone likes. I didn't. So no, I am more than willing to be the
10th man, the alternating viewpoint.
The
It's
10th man,
good.
the alternating
Yeah.
viewpoint, the one on the outside looking in at everyone having fun, and I'm just over here saying, holy crap, how did the last 10 minutes of this movie last so long?
Well, we each play that 10th man position once in a while. We share it and trade it around. It's good. It's good, BJ. You will strengthen the conversation.
Well,
But
so far,
yeah.
so far in this podcast, 10th man has been me 3 times?
Not always. Not always. I've been the 10th man at least once for the Star Trek motion picture, which we won't discuss because it will be a tangent. But yeah, we go back and forth a little bit. But yeah, you were alone on the Burbs, and once again, BJ, you are alone with Dr. Strangelove.
I am still... our review episode has not been published yet, so I am still waiting to get angry texts from people from when that gets posted.
So
Okay.
I take a complete opposite viewpoint on General Ripper, Jack Ripper. Interesting name. It's like the name of a serial killer from old 1800s. Jack the Ripper is what it reminds me of. But that character, though, I really like the character. I don't think all the lines he gave were necessarily delivered as potentially as good as they could have been. But altogether, he's a great character, and he's one of my favorites. And I know he's crazy, but that's the point. He seems like this strong, stalwart, altogether guy who knows what he's doing and has got everything planned out. And then as things slowly unravel, you begin to realize that his paranoia runs very deep. And on the outside, he seems like this rational person. But inwardly, he has this kind of crazy paranoia that has to do with something that he has no basis of. And we're in spoilers, right?
Yeah,
We entered in.
broke that, but then again, you guys were correct. It's a very old movie. Oh no, we're gonna spoil a 60-year-old.
Oh no.
Anyway, so the bodily fluids line.
Yeah.
That's the line that you guys tuned out on. I was just memorized when that's the wrong word. I was just mesmerized when I heard that, because I think that there's something to that. When people have strong paranoias, it's usually linked to some sort of conclusion they had long ago that they felt very strongly about. And with this character, in 1946, he mentions that fluoride was introduced right at the end of World War II. Suddenly fluoride shows up, and it's in all their water, and he envisions it as this contamination that is unstoppable. And he's the only one who sees.
Grab some aluminum foil.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the fact that was the moment, he had this idea that popped in his head. And because he already had a lot of paranoias, it just fit everything. And it became almost like his anchor in life that he was stuck to. And so his decision making just kind of collapsed after that. And he became more and more paranoid. And he sees communism spreading. He sees communist influence everywhere. And I've mentioned this before in the podcast. I'm not a fan of communism, but this movie points out and does a good job of showing how paranoia of any form can go over the rails and can become exaggerated. And it comedically plays that out for you. But it shows how he is slowly gone crazy, and this other more rational character is caught up in the mix of his craziness. And I love the line where he just turns and he says, "Come on, the redcoats are after us, let's get him." And he says that to his British. Yeah, it's just funny. It's funny. I think it's great.
So on the other hand, BJ, I'm wondering what your thoughts on. So we're in spoiler territory. I'm just going to kind of question your thoughts on what's happening inside the war room during this period of time. There's a particular character that I very much appreciated, General Turgidson. Are so he's played by George C. Scott, and
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on him? Because he kind of, especially right at the beginning, the president's asked, how could this even happen? And he goes on this long monologue that by the end of it practically had me rolling on the floor, because he's talking about how so much government red tape so many layers of government red tape have been slapped on top of each other to form this nightmare scenario, to allow this nightmare scenario to happen, right?
Uh-huh.
What are your thoughts on the war room in general, but him in particular, because that's probably what carries me through this movie.
I guess the war room parts were probably the best part of the movie. I mean, the parts on the plane, those were mostly okay, except for like the last scene with the plane. It's kind of prolonged, and they play a very drum heavy version of Johnny Comes Marching Home for like 7 minutes, and actually gave me a headache by the end of that scene. Holy crap.
They play it every time that crew is together on screen. Every time they play it. And the song starts the moment that they engage on their mission. I just think that's interesting that they played it that way. Yeah.
Oh, we're going to get into director eventually, and I'm going to have some words to say about that, how this movie was put together when we get into that. I very much appreciated the joke I loved the most about the plane was when they're getting ready to start their mission, the pilot, the captain of the plane, he goes back to an area like kind of behind where all the pilot and co-pilot and navigator, all them, and he goes and he starts opening up this vault, and it's this like well protected little security vault in there. And what does he pull out of that vault?
Yeah.
BJ, what does he pull out of that vault? Did you catch that?
Apparently not, because the only thing I can think of is that he pulls out the envelope that has the orders in it.
No, well, that's technically true.
That's
there are other things in there.
Earlier or later pulls that out of a different vault. Jeff, you laughed because you know what he pulled out.
Yeah,
I think it's the
hat.
Yeah, it's the hat. Like it's the most precious thing, and he knows everything's about to go off. And so, what is he going to do? He's going to go into fighting the commies in style with his hat on.
Which is funny because you'd almost think like he put the hat in the safe just in case this scenario would happen. Or, I mean, I'd like to think that he probably just, who knows why he put it in the safe, but it's great. And it also helps because now we've got this hat where we can easily distinguish him, even though his voice is very unique too.
Yeah.
But just the idea of keeping a hat just in case, you're on a final mission towards the end of the world and it's time for you to do your job. Now you've got this hat. It's time to get serious.
Yeah, no, he's taking it serious in his own particular way. But this is, like I said, this is satire because they've got the way that it's played out in the movie is complete satire versus there's points in the plane where they're like, okay, this is your briefing on it's almost like he's reading out like what's supposed to be an important briefing, but it's almost like the captain on a normal civilian airliner. This is your captain speaking, and this is what's going to happen, and this is the basic safety briefing that you're going to. And you're like, no, he's talking about this is the safety briefing for the crew members of what's going to happen to them. This is your survival kit. You've got a gun, you've got food rations, you got medicines, and you've got a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's like, what was it? Is that there's like a whole bunch of money and
there's money. There's like nylons.
Yeah, their survival kit. They have this very elaborate survival kit.
And the one guy's like, you could have a really fun time in Vegas for a whole weekend on all that. And I was like, yeah, well, on the other hand, a lot of military survival kits are like that, where they'll have just all kinds of weird random stuff that people, in charge think that a person needs in a survival situation. But
to kind of bring things around and to actually answer your question, Gary.
yeah,
So, like with a lot of other things this movie, I get what they're lampooning. I understand that. So it's not a matter of me not getting it. It's just a matter of it not really landing for me, I guess.
and I understood. Do you understand who they're lampooning?
In the case of the in the case of the general who says, "Yeah, let's just nuke him anyway because we might as well," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're lampooning like Warhawks or whatever. The
Actually,
parts of the military at the time who thought that or parts of the military, or I guess the public in general, who thought that a first strike was a good idea because if we strike first, we're only going to lose 20 million people.
yeah, there actually is a specific person, a kind of a character uh, during that period of time. Um, I mean, there was a lot of sentiment, but there was maybe I shouldn't be saying this particular, but at least as he's being represented in other media, the way there's a General Curtis LeMay who was in those particular circles, and he had a particular way of speaking that was very much like that.
The Cold War is kind of a interesting thing for people our age because we were technically alive during the tail end of it, but at least in my case, I wasn't really aware of it. I mean, like what, the Berlin Wall fell in like 89, so I was like 6.
Yeah.
And like my only memory of that is that I turned on TV because there was a show I wanted to watch, but instead there was this news broadcast, and it was really boring. But my parents wanted to watch it, so we had to watch it.
History through the eyes of a 6-year-old. Can I do you guys have anything else, or I've got a tangent?
Okay, what were you gonna?
So I have a memory with this movie too. When I was, so I was very young, and my grandfather came to live with us for a short time, and he was in World War II, and he would watch movies with us, and he watched Saving Private Ryan, and I was too young at the time, so I only was able to sneak in at certain parts. But he mentioned in that movie that it was completely unrealistic. And there were so many things wrong about it, and he went on and on and on and on and on. And he served in France and like a few months after D-Day, went all the way into Belgium and into Germany. So he saw quite a few things. One interesting thing about related to Dr. Strangelove is that sometime later we were sitting on the couch, Dr. Strangelove was on, and we got to the battle scenes where the airborne soldiers want to take over this base in order to get the General Ripper and get him to report to the president and all that. So Americans are attacking Americans. And there's a scene where they're at the approach of the Americans, there's a road with all these trucks coming down, and there's a machine gun that is way far back in the bushes. So far back, there's no way they'd be able to see it. And the trucks are in a distance, and they go, wow, these guys look American. They have this conversation, and then they just kind of open up and start shooting at them. And you see the Americans very far away jump out of the trucks, scramble, and hide behind anything they can hide behind, and you can barely see them in the shot. And that was the point where he turned and he said, see, that's what combat looks like. That's what it's like. And I just thought, what? We're watching Dr. Strangelove. Like, you said that Saving Private Ryan was just all Hollywood stuff. And then now we're watching Dr. Strangelove. And this movie, of all the movies, was the more realistic version. Which is what he said, which I thought was funny. But reviewing it again today, I honestly think that the few pieces of that they do in this movie of like the inside the B-52 and those battle scenes where you don't see very many people, they're just shooting into a building or they're shooting at targets far away. It's almost like this is a very well done, more like no movie can be perfectly realistic, but probably more on the side of trying to be as realistic as possible. And when
Okay.
you see those people inside that B-52, I mean, this movie really did a good job. I mean, that looks all real. I don't even know. It might actually have been shot inside of one, like an older model or something. I don't know, but this from a time in the like in the 1950s and 60s, they would have these really terrible sets for airplanes where it just obviously is not an airplane, but this one just looks so real, and I think it gives it a certain feel in the movie as well. Anyway, that's what I had to say.
I'm going to tell you guys a joke right now because that's actually in association with what Jeff said. Is that you guys ready for this?
I'm ready.
It's funny.
Okay. Because this is talking about this is a good segue into the next segment, the director. Do you guys know who the director of this movie is?
I did 5 seconds ago before I started thinking about it. Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick. So, I don't know if you knew this, but the moon landings were fake. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I've heard.
According
about
to
that.
the theory that Stanley Kubrick was the one that filmed them, right?
Stanley Kubrick,
Yeah.
but it costs the government so much money because he demanded that they film on location.
Yeah, funny.
Didn't. Anyways, yeah, Stanley Kubrick was like that. He had all kinds of strange things that he did, and having very accurate war scenes, I would not put it past him in a satire movie. I would not put it past him. He's the kind of director, like they don't make directors like that anymore, probably for good reason. Like if we ever talk about The Shining, yeah, there's good reason why they don't make directors like that anymore. But
He just makes everything very real, but then adds in the comedy on top of it. I've never seen The Shining, to be honest. But I feel like the goofiness and the very realistic, real-to-life, maybe not identical, but really a good representation of what would be realistic, was kind of meshed together in this movie. Because when the bomber crew is reading over their orders together and they're going over their checklists, I mean, a checklist on an airplane, that's very normal. Pilots go through checklists. When there's a problem, they have a checklist. There's a lot of that very procedural stuff.
And they're all sitting there before everything sparks off. They're all sitting there just kind of goofing around, bored and whatnot. And it's a very routine mission for them up to the point when they suddenly realize, no, wait a minute, now we're being ordered to do something completely different and very real. So
I know, and I love how they don't believe it at first. They get the order and they're like, no, that can't be right. Which is a good human reaction, because I think people wouldn't believe it at first. Like big news like that is usually met with great skepticism at the very beginning.
So, but I wanted to talk about, so back in the war room, don't know if you knew this, but the General Turgidson, right? So that high general who's the main Secretary of Defense, I guess. But yeah, that guy. He his lines. The actor was Stanley Kubrick. Actually pulled a trick on him. I don't know if you guys knew this. So he filmed twice him doing all of his lines, right? And he told him, okay, we just want to get it out of your system, act as like completely out there and weird military, exaggerated military, deliver all these lines that in you can even ad lib a whole bunch of stuff. of just excessive military paranoia and war hawkishness, and then we're going to film another set of lines where you're just delivering it in a more mundane manner, right? And then Stanley Kubrick used all the excessive lines because that was his plan all along. And the only way he knew the only way to get him to do the crazy lines was to convince him that he's not actually doing it that way, right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So, and that's how you get that's how you get like weird reactions like that. At least that's how he got it. Obviously there's some other controversy that surrounds Stanley Kubrick. The Shining being the pinnacle of that particular case. Do you guys ever really want to do that one, or should I just spoil that right now?
I would say go ahead and spoil it. Since I'm the designated stick in the mud, I guess I don't really like a lot of Stephen King novels anyway, so I would
It's
never
a Stephen King novel.
It is a Stephen King novel, and that
explains a bit.
It's actually kind of a controversial movie too, but partially because this is kind of like Stanley Kubrick at the height of he was a character, right? For instance, he locked everybody into that particular, because it's in a resort, the Shining. It's in a resort, and he kind of had everybody locked up there for a long time. So by the end of it, everybody was just a little bit crazy. And he was there's I can't remember her name, but she's the main lead actress. And he would intentionally, multiple times a day, scare her by acting like doing stuff that would scare her, like swinging bats around or hitting stuff right behind her, doing whatever. So she was completely unnerved and on the verge of being completely unhinged by the end of the filming, right? So when you're seeing the terror on her face, that is completely real and what he was aiming for. But she had to go through a lot of psychological counseling afterwards because of that. So Stanley Kubrick was a little bit of a odd character on that particular front. They don't let directors do any of that kind of stuff anymore, for good reason, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how dare they not let directors emotionally scar their actors to get a good scene anymore? The barbarians.
Nowadays, they just emotionally scar themselves.
Yeah.
There is still some amount of difficulty that they probably still face because of method acting or other things that they go through. I mean, anything, if you push it too hard, it can be problematic.
I have heard that there's a solid line of directors these days that actually go in a slightly different direction. I know Clint Eastwood is known for his particular method of directing, which is he'll shoot a scene one time, and then he'll say cut, wrap, whatever, and then that'll be it, right? And then someone will be like, wait, you don't want to shoot it again? And he'll be like, you can shoot this 60 more times and get maybe 30% better. Or you can just go and shoot, or you can just spend all that time going and shooting 60 more scenes and we'll be done way sooner. So
I also heard Clint Eastwood is his style is extremely laid back in that he doesn't push people too hard. So a lot of people will even yell action but he likes to have everybody at ease on the set.
Yeah.
And so people love to work with him.
I wonder if that's because he's a director who came from the other side of the camera. So
it definitely could be that he came from the other side of the camera. He knows how stressful things can be, and so he wants to create a positive working environment, which Stanley Kubrick wasn't exactly about. But
well, sometimes geniuses can be a little hard to work with. I think there's a lot of people who are very gifted, smart, and great in their field, and to really be friends with them or to have a good working relationship with them is actually very difficult. That doesn't mean that every genius is hard to get along with, but I just feel like there's a trend that a lot of them kind of are. And I don't know if there's a good answer for why that is, but I guess it's just that they like to push things as far as they can. But yeah, it sometimes happens.
So we've talked about just about everybody except for the titular character. BJ, what are your thoughts on that guy? The Doctor Strangelove.
I know who you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, guess my opinion stays about the same. I get what they're going for. You know, there were, shall we say, German scientists who may have been on the opposing side of a stern war that were recruited into the ranks, I believe, recruited into the ranks of various sort of Western powers. Is it Operation
Paperclip?
Yeah.
Paperclip, yep.
So, again, I get what they were going for, get what they were lampooning, just comedy-wise, didn't really land for me. I did have one part I kind of laughed at for all the wrong reasons. There's the part at the very end where he's having trouble with, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a artificial hand or if his hand just like spasms or whatever. But there's
I've heard what it's supposed to mean, because this I don't know if you know this about Stanley Kubrick films. There's a lot of like hidden meanings that he likes to put a lot of layers into it, and he doesn't always tell people what he's thinking, and so people have to like look into what they think it is. And the interpretation that a lot of people have with Doctor Strangelove is that his like left side of him, he's a person of a dual nature, and so the left side of him is more on the side of the Americans, and the right side of him, like maybe he got a transplant, like he shoved all of his like past life into just this one side of him, and that's why it's fighting partially, you note the left side wants to smoke and the right side does not want to smoke. So I don't know.
I sort of thought it was an artificial arm that
or
was
a transplant
mechanical.
Arm? I've heard that theories that it's a transplant arm from a Nazi officer or something like that.
But that doesn't make any sense, even in a satirical movie, in a tone like this. I don't know, but they never establish anything. But he has a glove on. I suspect that it's like that. But there's a scene. I actually was curious about this. So there is a shot where you can kind of see arm hair under his glove of this arm that's going berserk. So it's maybe they wanted to cover it up to pretend it was an artificial arm that was mechanical, and the mechanical part was breaking and hard to control. And it's kind of goes into his character that he is really kind of still trapped in his past and still part of that whole thing. And yeah.
After that deep and insightful conversation, the only thing that kind of made me laugh about it was because of a roundabout thing. There's a part where he's trying to control his left arm and like starts choking him, so he like bites his hand, and I'm like, oh, I bet you Jeff laughed at that part because he thought the part where in The Burbs where Tom Hanks' character bites the other guy's hand was really, really funny.
I do.
Well,
I think the moment he bites his hand is hilarious.
So yeah, that's again, I'm the designated stick in the mud for this episode. So.
Oh, it's fine.
It's the fact that they were fighting dirty, that one guy would eventually fight dirty about it. That's what's funny about The Burbs. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I get. No, BJ, you can like or dislike. It's not and in fact, it's probably a better conversation with at least one of us disagreeing and not liking this particular movie, because then it will foster a more genuine conversation. But in this particular case, so it also lets me, kind of view it from more of a analytic. And it kind of also inspires in me the desire to actually read the book, because a lot of the because I've never read this book. I really want to. I'll probably go find it now after all this is said and done, and actually go and read it. Because from what I understand, like everybody says it's, or at least the people who talk about it say that it's actually a really good case study. The movie, the movie does a good representation of it, but the book has a really good case study for how paranoia can go out the window, and how the systems put in place, if they're not regulated, like if we don't keep a really careful, close eye on this, it's just going to fall apart exactly like it does in the movie, right?
So it's like part of the message of this movie is that it's a warning about having so much power in the place of one person. And in this movie, nobody really intended one person to have so much power. It's just that they had problems to solve. And so they just came up with a solution for that problem, but they didn't quite think through all of the aspects involved. So it was an accident, in a way. So this one commander on a base somewhere who has one squadron of B-52s now has the ability, even though he doesn't have the authority to do it, he has the ability to start World War III. And so all of the checks and balances that could have happened in the war room between different people giving different points of view and coming to a better decision, all of that can't happen. He now can get away with this. So it's a huge warning about how you have to make sure that people don't have access to that much power. That's why there's usually, in most movies, they show like 2 missile keys or different things, and how things really are is we'll never know completely. But the whole idea is that there's a whole lot of procedures and everything in place to make sure that these powerful weapons don't fall into the hands of only one person.
Oh, sweet summer child. Do you know they've got declassified documentation on Cold War strategies, Jeff? I don't know if you knew this.
Yeah, I was going to say that we could probably research like the actual Cold War stuff based on declassified documents now, because like Gary said, they're declassified now. I mean, isn't there like places where you can like go take tours of like decommissioned missile silos?
And I want to tell you guys something, how inaccurate Hollywood gets it, because I don't know if you knew this, but up until I think it was somewhere in the mid 70s, so they have codes, right, that lock the capabilities of a lot of the more complicated weapon systems. Not all of them, because I don't know if you knew this, but a lot of the weapon systems are basically gravity bombs. Do you know what a gravity bomb is, right? It's just a bomb that you drop.
It just drops. It doesn't guide itself. It just follows whatever gravity tells it to do. Yeah.
And it's a nuclear weapon that is detonated via the gravity dropping. Like it drops, and then once it hits the ground, the 2 bits of metal clang together, and that's everything that's necessary to make it go boom. But, or at least that's the theory. Obviously, making it actually happen is a lot more complicated. But a lot of the more complicated weapon systems have codes on them. And do you know what the code was up until mid-60s? This came out because of declassification.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Even simpler.
I don't know.
0000.
Oh, it's from Star Trek.
No, seriously, it was like some sort of really, it was like all zeros or something. The reason why they did this is because the military generals were very paranoid about the fact that Russia could get inside of the chain of command and disrupt everything, or kill off enough of the chain of command that
and then they would set the code
base that the base commanders wouldn't have the power to utilize the weapon systems in a retaliatory fashion. So
I mean, like on one hand, yeah, that's really dumb, but on the other hand, I can kind of almost see the logic behind it because, if you're like a agent of an opposing government and you're trying to do something to the other side, atomic bombs, are you really going to guess that their codes are 0000?
Yeah. But there's some interesting studies that people have done. I think it's called white papers. It's basically all the declassified or information that you're allowed to actually read about government. And there's surprisingly a lot of information into it. I'm not going to talk about all of it because A, we'd be here forever, and B, I don't really want to. But it's interesting how various and assorted countries handle the particular questions of how to end the world if you should choose to, right? But yeah. So the Russians, I get what Dr. Strangelove, the joke that has me, the best joke in my opinion that he delivers is he's talking about the doomsday device that the Russians build, right? And
yeah, what's the point of building a doomsday weapon if you don't tell anybody about it?
Yeah, that line had me laughing. I'm guessing you actually did like that one?
I thought that was a good line, yes.
Yes. So he's like, what's the point of making a doom? Because it's a deterrence weapon. It's not meant to be a weapon that is going to be used against people. It's meant to be a shield. It's meant to be a thing that says, stop, don't do it. Because if you do that, I mean, that's the entire doctrine of MAD, of mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's sort of MAD to take into the nth degree.
Yeah.
Well, and the show is making fun of people at this point because it's making fun of the Russians who obviously don't have it. It's made up. At least I get that impression.
Well,
and but everyone believes it. I think that's the joke, is that the president thinks that it's so important, and it's just a diplomatic ploy that is working perfectly. And then they have that other American general who just says, oh, I wish could you imagine if we had one of those things? Who actually wants this thing, that doesn't really need to even exist. Yeah. Anyway.
The theory exists if you have, I think they're called dirty bombs, where they intentionally have something that's subcritical nuclear, and it will put out a lot of dirty fallout. That because radiation exists in three forms. Do you guys know about that? Small science lesson.
Go ahead.
If I did, it has escaped.
I don't know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
Three forms of particles that radiation releases. Alpha, beta, and gamma, right? So gamma radiation, you might have heard about it, the whole Hulk comes from gamma radiation. Gamma radiation is highly energetic and will stay around exactly less than a millisecond, right? It is a ray. It is a emission of energy, right? It is not actually a particle, but this physics stuff, whatever, right? So that's gamma radiation. Beta radiation is, now gamma radiation is very scattered, highly energetic, and won't stay around for very long. The only thing that can reliably block gamma radiation is like heavy lead shielding or
heavy leady.
Heavy leady.
heavy lead.
That's
heavy
what it
lead
says in the
shielding,
manual. Heavy leady.
Heavy lady shielding.
It will always block these particles.
Multiple feet of concrete, dirt, water, all that kind of stuff, right? So it requires a heavy shielding to get to stop you from being hit by gamma radiation. On the other hand, it's the least destructive of all the radiation, right? So beta radiation is, I think, slightly visible via. Anyways, I'm kind of fuzzy on the whole beta radiation, but beta radiation can be blocked by, it's maybe solid wall, maybe even just a few solid, particularly thick sheets of material, right? It doesn't take much to stop beta radiation. And alpha radiation is the most harmful, longest lasting, because it's a dust particle, right? And alpha radiation can be blocked by a gas mask. Basically, don't lick stuff after a nuke goes off, and you won't get a lot of alpha radiation in you. So, hey, yay!
But even like if the river's contaminated and you go for a swim, it can get all over you then.
Yeah, that's alpha radiation. Don't be touching a lot of stuff for like a few weeks after that, because alpha radiation sticks around, and it takes a lot of cleaning to get taken care of. But if you also heard that and wash your hands a lot, you'll be fine.
Well, I also heard that the altitude that the detonation happens makes a difference. So if it's higher up in the atmosphere, then the ground is less contaminated. But
that's
more about how heavy the fallout is, rather than like the type of radiation that occurs.
There's a movie I would recommend if anybody really wants to get into this. It's called The Atomic Bomb Movie. It's released in like the late 90s, early 2000s. William Shatner narrated it, and it's a really good documentary that has all of the American nuclear testing up until then. I don't think we've done anything after that because we've kind of figured out what we're doing with nukes now.
I think you made me watch that once, but I don't remember much about it.
It's a very comprehensive movie about nuclear. It's got all the footage that they've got that they had up till then, and it's got a very good telling you about how all this stuff works and all that kind of things. So it's interesting with that. So yeah. So we got this like crazy. The Russians have made a doomsday weapon. The Americans go in and accidentally trigger it. The heroic James Earl Jones and his intrepid crew. Oh no! Wait a minute. He's just a lieutenant on that plane.
I don't know what rank he is.
No, the character is a lieutenant. You read the credits afterwards. He's a lieutenant.
Okay.
So So just as an interesting point, like, I knew that the scene of the guy waving his cowboy hat around as he rides the bomb down, I knew that was from this movie, but this was the first time I watched it, so I was always under the assumption that he rode the bomb down on purpose. So it kind of surprised me that it was kind of an accident.
Yeah, and also
like, where'd Major Kong go?
Yeah, it's also like he's pointing the wrong direction too. In other depictions of it, they have them pointing the other way, which would make more sense. But they have him pointing like, I don't know if you could say there's a front end or a back end to this particular bomb, but he's pointing towards the quote unquote back end of the bomb.
Oh, it has to be facing the camera, right?
Yeah. But no, he actually is. It makes sense to what he was doing at the time. So, yeah. But
it takes a lot of guts. I know this is just this is a satirical movie, but that would take a lot of guts to go through that bomb bay, sit on the bomb, and try to repair the electrical circuits above to try and get the bombs to release.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, two.
I mean, don't look down, right?
Well, I mean, to be fair, at this point, they're flying low, about to deploy a nuclear weapon. Realistically, I don't think they're making out of the blast radius, but
Yeah, I don't think that bomber would have survived either.
No,
If they're flying low, they were all gone when that
the
thing went off.
actually the movie, how the movie depicts it versus how these things actually would play out. The bombs have parachutes on them, and then the bomber actually, would be releasing not low altitude, would be releasing at a very high altitude, and then would just as fast as it could get out of the area. As depicted in the movie, obviously, there's not much they're going to do. They're probably not going to make it. But as depicted, the actual doctrinal practice in real life, they would have plenty of time to get out of the area because the bomb would be dropping very slowly, being slowed down by parachute and everything.
Well, this one of the things this movie tackles is the problem with things going unexpectedly. So you have all these procedures and rules set up, but then there's always going to be anomalies. It's like the whole chaos theory from Jurassic Park, from that great story. But so you have this, the bombers were called in, they went on their mission, they finally got the code after a whole lot happened. They got the code, they recalled the bombers, everything should be good. Well, it turns out the Russians managed, they shot down 4 of them as they thought, but one of those was just damaged. And that crew was just a well-trained, well-committed crew. And their commander, Kong, was just really, really good and really dedicated. And when it came down to fulfilling his mission, he was going to go all the way for sure. And
I like
I like how they showed how those little things, it only takes a little thing to go farther than expected for consequences to happen.
I like how General Turgidson was getting excited when he was describing how well his people would perform as they were speeding towards the destruction of the world. He's like, they'd fly low and fast, and they'd, the determined crew that there's no way they could be stopped. And then he's like looking around like, oh wait, no, that's a bad thing.
I know. They were trained to do this, but now in this circumstances, because of the action of one person, it's now become a very bad thing.
So, mild tangent brought up by something that Jeff mentioned. Y'all know that this is like I don't know if it's like this week or this month or whatever, but it's the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park being in theaters. Gentlemen, we are old. Because I remember going to go see Jurassic Park in theater with you guys like once or twice.
Yep.
So
I know we went at least once.
Once.
And I know that BJ was up in his seat, but I think both Gary and I were both sunken down in the seat.
Well, to be fair, I did see Jurassic Park like 5 times in theaters, so
yeah.
I wasn't going to bring up anything else because there are stories I could share, but then there would be retaliation, so I'm not going to invoke MAD here.
Oh, yes. Mutually assured destruction would definitely happen should those stories ever come out. Yes.
That's the problem with podcasting with longtime friends, is that we all have dirt on each other.
Yes. Lots and lots of dirt.
Much dirt.
Yes. So we went to Jurassic Park, and it was scary for some. But we survived it.
And now we've seen scarier movies that would...
Yeah, and then you watch it today, and it's like, it's not that scary. I mean, it's well done, but it just doesn't have the same effect. Yeah.
Well, again, it's because we're
much older.
It's like, I know Jurassic Park's like a PG-13 movie, and we were like 9 or 10, but I think that was almost like the golden age to go see Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
There's a lot of movies like that. They were great when they came out, and they're still good today, but I don't think newer generations will
I
see them the same way.
Yeah, if you see it at a certain time in your life, then it's golden, and then after that, it starts to lose its shine.
Yeah, there are. I think I've mentioned this before. There are some movies that I remember liking as a kid that I am steadfastly avoiding because I don't want to ruin them. Like after this particular movie and my failure to find it amusing, I was starting to ponder, like, if I watched Monty Python the Holy Grail again, I don't know if I would find it funny anymore. Because when I was in 7th grade, that movie was hilarious. Me and Jeff annoyed everyone on the bus by reciting that movie to each other on a field trip. Mm-hmm. And I'm like the jokes I remember, don't know if 30 years later I would find them as funny. So I'm just gonna never watch that movie again, and just enjoy it in my memory.
That is certainly true. That certain things, for instance, this movie, I had the last time I remember watching this movie was as a young man in the
young man.
I was just barely starting my career in the Army, and one of my sergeants was like, have you seen this movie? And I'm like, no. And he's like, okay, we're going to watch this movie. And we went and watched this movie together. And I was like, what the heck am I even watching here?
Gents, for some reason I feel the need to instill the doctrine of mutually assured destruction in you.
Well, it's some of the things, like Jeff was saying, I remember hearing about this from another podcaster as well, how accurate a lot of the depictions of people, just in general, people are, or the military, what's happening with the military in this particular one is as well, how you would, how certain things happen, right? How people are talking and how people are acting during certain periods of time. Like the machine gun nest at the scene Jeff was talking about earlier, and how they're talking about it, like, wow, those Russians sure do have stuff that looks a lot like ours. But the base commander said light them up, so we're gonna go light them up. And so yeah, it's like, and then they come to they justify their actions to themselves, and this is like, and so I didn't even catch that when I was a younger man, and now that I'm older, I caught it. And like, there's a lot of things I didn't remember about it. And there's new depths that I'm seeing to it now that I'm a much older person and seeing it, in my much later years.
I don't know. I don't know if it's just the way you told the story, or if in real life it was more than just you and the sergeant, but just from how you told it, it sounded like he chose you in particular to go watch this movie. I'm like, the kind of impression Gary leave on this guy that he's like, you know what? I need to show this kid Dr. Strangelove.
Actually, what it was I didn't have its place to sleep that night. And the guy's like, okay, you can come crash at my place tonight. And I'm like, sure, yeah, thank you. And I went and crashed at his place, and he's like bored and didn't have anything. And he's like, oh, we're going to watch this movie tonight. It's like, fine. So that's what we watched before we went to bed.
That makes more sense, but is far less amusing than the situation I made up mentally.
I mean, there's a lot of things that I watched in the Army that I definitely would not normally have watched. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long pause.
I'm trying to remember.
Do you want me and Jeff to tangent real quick so you don't have to think about it?
No, it's not that. It's like there's some movies, like, for instance, when I was deployed, there was a regular Army sergeant who's in charge of us. He's a big old I think he's from Boston area, big old black guy, and he had a really interesting sense of humor, and he loved to have certain, for instance, the Boondocks is a cartoon that has very specific depictions of racial minorities, especially black people, and he loved to watch that, but most especially he loved to watch us while we're watching it, as we're all just like these white guys from Utah, and he's this big old black guy, and he's laughing all over the place at these jokes, and then he's watching us, he's laughing at us as we're kind of squirming, like trying not to laugh at some of this stuff because we're like, is this are we going to be considered racially insensitive if we laugh at stuff? Because it makes a fun, and there's a lot of fun that it makes about black people in various assorted situations. Especially like for some odd reason, the one he said is absolutely the gospel truth. Is apparently there's a scene where it depicts a chair being thrown, and apparently that's a way to start a riot. And he's like, yes, that's the honest gospel truth right there. And I'm like, I'm gonna take your word for that.
There's a YouTube video I remember watching. It was a bunch of special forces guy talking, and they're talking about how when you're over there and you're like in base or whatever, you're just so bored that you will watch whatever. Mm-hmm. And someone found a DVD of The Notebook, which is a noted rom-com, and I guess guys kept finding like in and out room that I was playing in. At the end of the movie, of like the joke was that at the end of the movie, like everyone who say watch it, were like, "That's a really dumb movie, man."
No, it's you'd be surprised about how much they appreciate all kinds. You're right. The movies over there were, if you had a movie, you would watch a movie. It doesn't matter what the movie was about. You would put it in and be like, okay, this is the movie I've got today, guys. And they're like, oh, okay, we're going to watch this movie. Doesn't, action, rom-com, doesn't matter. You're watching the movie.
I guess I was wrong. I guess Notebook isn't really a rom-com. It's more of a romantic drama, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I guess you wouldn't cry at the end of a rom-com unless it was like cute crying. I guess we're like, what's the term, like ugly crying or whatever.
You know what would what the one that they don't like watching though is? I can tell you this for certain. Jump scare movies. I wonder why. If someone starts putting one of those on, everybody's like, okay, I'm loading up my stuff right now. You better get this out of the DVD player before I'm fully loaded.
Nothing with anxiety added to it. There's no need for that, right? The Notebook is a much better selection.
Anxiety overseas. Everybody's like, no, we are not going to watch the movie that's going to make everybody jumpy and paranoid and scared all freaking night long.
You want the opposite from that, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of Dr. Strangelove. It's a little bit of a shorter episode, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't have really anything else to add. I do think it's a good movie.
I kind of appreciate it as a movie. I'm pretty sure I would appreciate the book a lot more. Even though I recommended this, I recommended this because I know that it is very much a culturally relevant movie. It's something that's impacted a lot of movies from the time it was made till now. A lot of new movies and media, like you'll see references to it in a lot of things. Like for instance, like BJ was talking about, the guy writing the bomb down. That's where this comes from.
Yeah.
And BJ obviously this kind of falls flat for him.
Yeah. Like I said, I appreciate the plot, so I'll probably read the book at some point. So I wonder if that will make me like the movie less, because, like, as an example of like another book that, well, I guess in this case they didn't really stay true to the book, but Starship Troopers. I had watched the movie first and thought it was okay. Then
Starship Troopers, right? Yeah.
What did I say?
Star Trek Troopers.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I heard. I don't know what you said it.
Yeah. Starship Troopers is what I meant. If I said Star Trek Troopers, that would be kind of funny, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Starship Troopers. I had seen the movie first, thought it was okay, then I read the book, and the book is very different from the movie. And reading the book made me kind of hate the movie, which is kind of sad because everyone knows the movie a lot more than the book.
Oh, the book is a freaking work of art, and the movie is made by a guy who
Not.
never read the book and didn't really want to read the book.
So, okay, and with that, why is the question, right? Like, why do you even need the book? You could have just made a movie.
Is the eternal question. Because of this, we're never going to get a proper Starship Troopers book, Starship Troopers movie, which would be honestly really good.
Because it's already been made. You can't remake it, right?
Yeah,
Unless you remake the normal, because it's like a whole franchise. There's like several Starship Trooper movies.
People freaking love the Starship Trooper movies, and so now there's a bunch of people who think that Starship Troopers the book is yay fascism, but it's not. But
it's not. If you read
but the director heard that the director heard that the book was to water things down. The whole story behind it is a little more in depth than this, but generally the opinion among some is that the book is pro-fascism. So that's what the director heard. So he read part of the book or didn't want to read the book and just took people's word for it. So he took Starship Troopers and made the human side fascist.
So you don't think Starship Troopers has any fascist tones at all of any kind, whether it's pro or against or whatever?
No, there's
nothing in it.
No, it's so much of the book is sort of the philosophy of the world it's set in, which on the surface if someone just like read the description of it, didn't read the book, I can kind of see why they would say, oh, that's fascist.
But fascism is everything devoted to the state, and the state runs everything, right?
Yeah.
How would you explain then Rico's family in the book?
Well, see, that's
the logical argument, right?
Yeah.
Rico's family is insanely rich. They run they have basically a massive food distribution empire throughout Central and parts of South America. They're massively wealthy, and they haven't had anybody with that's even being able to vote for the last goodness only knows how long. Their business empire is completely separated from the state. So I don't know how people can quite that would involve an actual detailed reading of the book. Yes, I understand your
I was going to say that would require someone to read the book as opposed to saying, yes, I would like to know more or whatever. So I'm trying to think of a good example of this for Jeff. So one of the things Starship Troopers, the book, is best known for is that it's one of the first depictions of power armor, like a powered suit, like for example, Iron Man, or like the suits used in Edge of Tomorrow. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But in the movie, they don't have those. So it's like, say someone made a Star Wars movie with what's a good example?
Star Wars movie with... I got it. Yes. Okay, we're talking about Star Wars, right?
Well,
with no X-Wings, and the Jedi are using clubs.
Yeah, I guess that's another good example, is that in Starship Troopers, the book, like the entire mobile infantry is like, what, 10,000 people?
Yeah, that's the entire, maybe 20,000.
And they're all super highly trained, but in the movie, it's like...
in the movie, they're grunts.
They're grunts.
So they're designed to be highly motivated, I
have an example, but no one here but Gary would get it.
What's your example, BJ? I'm curious.
So in the book, the mobile infantry are Space Marines. In the movie, they are Imperial Guard.
Yes, I fully understand that. But BJ, don't worry.
Gary's the only one that gets that.
Warhammer is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. Don't worry. Eventually, people will get it.
So these power armor suits, were they big? Like
no,
they were about the size of them. They just had this armor around them. Okay.
Yeah, they're about human size. I think.
And by power armor, they're like mechanically.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, so like you move your arm, and there's a mechanical movement that makes your arm move faster. And with more power.
Example I think most people would get would be like Iron Man, but probably a little more bulky. Maybe more like the bad guy suit in Iron Man 1.
Yeah. Obadiah's suit in Iron Man 1 would probably be, and it's jump infantry, so everybody's like jumping from spot to spot, but there's not enough power in the system to actually have it be like flight infantry. So it's not flying like Iron Man is, but it's more like really powerful jumps that they can perform.
I am so sorry. I did not mean to get off on this whole thing about Starship Troopers right when we were trying to end.
I mean,
it's your fault this time, BJ.
It is.
But it is
it's like
you're the one who.
It's like we're probably never going to talk about Starship Troopers the movie, I would assume. So I need to get out of my system somehow, I guess. So.
But we're comparing books and movies, and that is a really good. Whereas, from what I've heard, this one is a good example of one to the other. It's just one is satire and one is serious, versus the Starship Troopers was kind of a bad transition from book to movie. Yeah. Where
but
they
this
took the bare
book
bones of Starship Troopers and kind of violated it until they got the story they wanted to out of it.
Yeah, but the Red Alert book, it does have at least, even though it doesn't have the satire, it has the message of beware of super weapons going out of control and aware of people making bad decisions around them.
Yes.
Does it have that?
From my understanding, yes. It's the same plot without the bad satire. Or, in my opinion, bad satire. Apparently, obviously, most other people disagree with me. And that's okay.
That is okay, because not everybody appreciates the same things, BJ. It's
humor
perfectly
is
fine
subjective.
to have a difference of opinion, most especially when it comes to comedy.
And I believe we have pretty much at this point very established that me and Jeff have very different opinions on comedy.
So yeah, that's the movie.
We didn't used to, because remember, we used to laugh about the Monty Python and Holy Grail. But I still think
I'm turning into a bitter old man. Humbug.
It's not funny, you silly kids.
Get off my lawn!
So yeah. I liked this movie. Jeff really liked this movie, and BJ gives it a strong 3 out of 10.
It made me want to read the book. Let's just phrase it like that. So yeah. So trying to. Oh yeah. So so when this comes out, you'll have hopefully listened to our year in review podcast, and at the end of that, we mentioned that we were having trouble deciding on one of the movies we're going to watch for Halloween. So if you haven't said whether you would rather have us have us review The Haunting versus Dracula. That was the other one. I think of that for a second. Just leave us a comment, either on YouTube or on Facebook at Wandering Tangent Podcast, or Twitter at I forget what our Twitter thing is. Wandering T Pod, I think. That shows how often I look at it even. There you go. But yeah, let us know what you would like to listen to, because I still can't decide. And do we want to say what we're going to watch next time, or do we want it to be a surprise?
I think we should go back to surprise, because
okay.
I was tempted to change things at the last minute, but then I was like, no, wait, I had people locked in.
You were about to pull a Jeff.
Yeah.
I was about to pull a
We'll leave it as a surprise. In other words, we don't really know.
So,
and we have need more time to figure it out.
So in other words, I need to ask Jeffy if he still wants to do it or if he changed his mind. Gotcha. Okay. So, gentlemen, any last thoughts?
One last thing. General Turgidson in the War Room has a plaque in front of him says World Targets in Megadeaths. I laughed at that. That's it.
What? That's like a folder in front of him?
No, it's a plaque.
It's a plaque, and it's in the war room, right?
Yes.
I thought it was like I thought it was like a binder.
It could be a binder too, but it was very prominent in front of him through a lot of the scenes he was talking in the war room.
Okay, so one last tangent, my Remy, I guess. Just a quick one. Did y'all ever play DEFCON on PC?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, yeah, it's basically the end of war games, but a video game. So, okay. Another Cold War movie, I guess. Anyway, so I'm gonna leave that there. So, guess that's it. Yes? Question mark?
Question mark.
Question mark?
Yeah. What are our procedures for ending the podcast? Do we need to get our checklist out?
Okay, checklist out. Is Jeff gonna go off on one more wild tangent? Yes, no?
No.
Time break full church. Okay, if no, then...
no additional tangent. Check.
Gary's got nothing additionally to add. Check.
Okay, if no, then go to... So, thank you for listening to Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff and Gary, not special guest star anymore.
But
still don't know what to refer to him as. Still mutual friend. Still a friend, but no longer special. I don't know.
You've become normal instead of special.
Normal guest star. Normal guest. Normal co-host. Who knows? We'll find out next assigned episode if he's here or not. We'll see you next time.